a new screen, and all new equipment in the projection room in those days.
For decades, people have debated what really led to John Wayne's death. Was it years of heavy smoking, a hidden illness, or something far more controversial that Hollywood tried to keep quiet? As new information emerged over the years, many of the biggest rumors were finally put to the test, revealing a story that was far more complicated than most fans ever realized. Join us as we uncover the truth behind John Wayne's final years, separate fact from fiction, and explore how the mystery surrounding his death was finally solved. Hollywood's secret. By 1964, John Wayne had become one of the biggest stars in Hollywood. For decades, he had built a reputation as the tough cowboy who never backed down. Whether he was playing a soldier, a sheriff, or a rancher, audiences saw him as someone who was strong, fearless, and almost impossible to defeat. That image had made him a household name, and it was also one of the most valuable brands in the movie business. Behind the scenes, however, Wayne was about to face the biggest challenge of his life. In 1964, doctors discovered that he had lung cancer. The diagnosis came as a shock, even though Wayne had been a heavy smoker for many years. At the time, he smoked constantly, both in his personal life and in many of his movies. Smoking had become part of his public image, and few people questioned it. Doctors recommended immediate surgery. The operation was far more serious than the public realized. Surgeons removed an entire lobe of his left lung, along with 4 ribs, in an effort to stop the cancer from spreading. It was a major procedure that required a long recovery and left Wayne physically weaker than before. Despite how serious the operation was, the public was never told the full truth. Instead of announcing that Wayne had cancer, the studio and his representatives carefully controlled what information was released. Official statements described the surgery as the removal of a growth from his lung. The word cancer was deliberately avoided. Fans were led to believe he had experienced a health problem that had already been taken care of and that he would soon return to normal. This was no accident. Hollywood executives believed that admitting one of the industry's biggest action stars had cancer could damage his image. John Wayne's appeal depended on audiences believing he was nearly unstoppable. He wasn't just playing strong characters on screen, many people believed he truly was that man in real life. A public battle with cancer threatened that carefully built reputation. There were also financial reasons for keeping everything quiet. Wayne was involved in expensive movie productions, and studios had invested millions of dollars in films that depended on him. Any suggestion that his health was failing could create doubts among investors, theater owners, and audiences. Keeping his illness private helped protect both his career and the studio's investments. Although Wayne eventually returned to work, things were no longer the same. Movie productions quietly made changes to accommodate his health without telling the public. Some physically demanding scenes were reduced or rewritten. Filming schedules became more flexible to give him extra time to rest between scenes. Camera angles were sometimes chosen to hide signs of weight loss or physical strain. Stunt doubles handled more of the difficult action whenever possible. The truth remained hidden for years, helping preserve the legend of the fearless Duke long after his health had quietly begun to change. But keeping his first cancer secret was only the beginning, because an even bigger mystery about what really caused his illness was still waiting to be uncovered. Smoking, radiation, or something else? One question has followed John Wayne's death for decades. What really caused his cancer? Some people point to his lifelong smoking habit. Others believe his time filming The Conqueror exposed him to dangerous radiation. Even today, the debate continues. Although medical experts now have a much clearer picture than they did years ago, there is no doubt that smoking played a major role in Wayne's health. For much of his adult life, he smoked heavily. Cigarettes were a constant part of both his personal life and his movie roles. In many of his films, audiences regularly saw him holding a cigarette or cigar, making smoking seem like part of his tough image. At the time, smoking was common in Hollywood, and the long-term health risks were not discussed as openly as they are today. Even after his lung cancer diagnosis and the major surgery that removed part of his lung, Wayne struggled to give up cigarettes. According to people who worked with him, he eventually returned to smoking despite warnings from his doctors. He reportedly believed he could continue living much as he always had, even after surviving a life-threatening illness. This decision surprised many people, especially because he had already experienced the damage smoking could cause firsthand. Still, smoking is only one part of the story. For many years, another theory has attracted enormous attention. It centers on the 1956 film The Conqueror, in which John Wayne played Genghis Khan. Much of the movie was filmed near St. George, Utah, an area that had been affected by radioactive fallout from above-ground nuclear weapons tests conducted at the nearby Nevada test site during the 1950s. At the time, little public attention was given to the possible dangers of filming in the area. The cast and crew spent weeks working outdoors, and reports later claimed that some of the film's producers even transported large amounts of local dirt back to Hollywood to recreate the location for additional scenes. Years later, reports began circulating that an unusually large number of people connected with the production had developed cancer. Several well-known cast members, including John Wayne, Susan Hayward, Pedro Armendariz, and Agnes Moorehead, were all diagnosed with cancer during their lifetimes. This led many people to believe that radiation exposure during filming was responsible. As more information became public after his first battle with cancer, another difficult truth slowly emerged. His health problems were far from over. Fighting cancer. After undergoing major surgery in 1964, most people would have expected John Wayne to step away from acting for a long period. Doctors had removed one lobe of his left lung and 4 ribs to treat his cancer, and recovering from such a serious operation was anything but easy. Yet Wayne did something that surprised many people. Instead of disappearing from the public eye, he returned to work much sooner than many expected. To fans watching his movies, it looked as though very little had changed. Wayne continued starring in westerns and war films, delivering the same confident performances that had made him famous. His deep voice, commanding presence, and familiar screen style were all still there. Audiences saw the same fearless Duke they had admired for years, and few suspected that he was working through the lasting effects of cancer surgery. Behind the scenes, however, life had become much more difficult. Removing part of a lung permanently reduced Wayne's breathing capacity. He tired more easily than he had before, and physically demanding scenes became harder to complete. Long days on movie sets that had once seemed routine now required much more effort. Although he rarely complained publicly, people working with him noticed that his stamina was no longer what it had been. Film crews quietly adjusted to these changes without drawing attention to them. Directors often planned shooting schedules to give Wayne more opportunities to rest between scenes. Instead of filming long action sequences all at once, productions sometimes spread them over several days. This allowed him to recover without delaying the entire production. Some scenes were also rewritten or simplified. If a sequence originally required extensive running, climbing, or horseback riding, filmmakers occasionally found ways to reduce the physical demands while still making the finished movie appear exciting. These changes were rarely obvious to audiences because they were carefully planned during production. Body doubles became even more important than before. Like many major stars, Wayne had used stunt performers throughout his career for dangerous scenes. After his surgery, Those doubles were relied on more often for physically demanding moments. Whenever possible, stunt performers handled falls, fights, and difficult riding scenes that could place unnecessary strain on Wayne's body. Carefully planned camera work also helped preserve his image. Directors chose angles that emphasized Wayne's strength while avoiding signs of physical weakness or weight loss. Clever editing allowed action scenes to appear seamless, even when multiple people were involved in creating a single sequence. Most viewers never noticed these filmmaking techniques because they blended naturally into the finished films. The effort to protect Wayne's public image extended well beyond movie sets. During interviews, premieres, and public events, he continued smiling for photographers and speaking with confidence. His clothing was carefully chosen, and appearances were planned to make him look as healthy as possible. If he became tired, schedules could be shortened or adjusted without explaining the real reason. At the same time, Wayne made another decision that puzzled many people around him. Despite surviving lung cancer, he reportedly continued smoking. Doctors warned him about the dangers, but quitting proved difficult. Friends and crew members later recalled seeing him with cigarettes, even after recovering from surgery. Whether it was habit, personal choice, or simple determination to continue living as he always had, Wayne refused to let his illness completely change his lifestyle. As the years passed, that carefully protected image remained intact, but behind the scenes, a far more serious battle was quietly beginning. When the cancer returned. For a time, it looked like John Wayne had beaten the odds. After surviving lung cancer and returning to movies, many people believed the worst was behind him. He continued making films, appearing at public events, and carrying himself with the same confidence that audiences had come to expect. To millions of fans, the Duke had defeated cancer and moved on with his life. Sadly, that wasn't the end of his battle. More than a decade after his lung surgery, Wayne developed another form of cancer. This time, it was stomach cancer. The diagnosis came during the late 1970s, and once again, it brought uncertainty about his future. Unlike his first illness, which had been treated with surgery and followed by years of work, this new cancer would prove far more difficult to overcome. At first, very few people outside his inner circle knew anything was wrong. The early symptoms were easy for the public to miss. Wayne experienced weight loss, fatigue, and ongoing digestive problems, but these struggles remained largely private. Fans still saw photographs of him attending events and making occasional appearances, giving the impression that he was simply getting older rather than facing another serious illness. Those closest to him understood the truth. Family members, trusted friends, and his doctors knew that his health was once again becoming a major concern. They worked hard to protect his privacy, believing that his medical condition should remain a personal matter. Very little information was shared with reporters, and whenever questions arose, public statements were often brief and reassuring. As the disease progressed, Wayne quietly began receiving treatment. Unlike today's world, where celebrities often speak openly about their illnesses, Hollywood in the 1970s usually handled serious health issues very differently. Studios and publicists believed that revealing too much about a star's condition could damage both public interest and future business opportunities. Although Wayne was no longer making movies as frequently as he once had, he remained one of the biggest names in American entertainment, and protecting that image continued to matter. Medical appointments, hospital visits, and treatments were handled with as much privacy as possible. Public appearances became less frequent, but they were carefully managed whenever they happened. When Wayne did appear in public, photographers often captured only brief moments, making it difficult for fans to notice how much his health had changed. Behind closed doors, however, the situation became increasingly serious. the cancer gradually spread, making everyday activities more difficult. Wayne's strength continued to decline, and he found it harder to maintain the energy that had defined him throughout his career. Simple tasks required more effort, and long periods of activity became exhausting. Those who spent time with him noticed changes that the public rarely saw. He had lost a noticeable amount of weight, and his physical endurance continued to decrease. Although he still tried to maintain his familiar confidence, it became harder to hide the effects of the disease from those closest to him. His family remained determined to shield him from unnecessary public attention. They limited what information was released and tried to give him as much peace as possible while he focused on treatment. This decision reflected the same approach that had been taken during his lung cancer years earlier. Rather than allowing constant public discussion about his condition, those around Wayne chose to keep the details within a small circle. Before long, the world would learn that John Wayne's final days looked very different from the fearless characters he had spent a lifetime playing. The final months. By the spring of 1979, it had become clear that John Wayne was running out of time. His stomach cancer had continued to spread despite treatment, and his health was declining much faster than it had during his earlier battle with lung cancer. The actor, who had spent decades playing strong, confident heroes, was now facing a reality that no amount of determination could overcome. During his final months, Wayne was hospitalized several times as doctors tried to manage his condition. Each visit became more serious than the last. His medical team worked to ease his pain, help him eat, and keep him as comfortable as possible. Although every possible effort was made, the cancer continued to progress. One of the most noticeable changes was his rapid weight loss. Wayne had always been a large man, standing over 6 feet tall with a powerful build that became one of his trademarks. As the illness advanced, however, he lost a significant amount of weight. Friends and family who saw him during this period were often shocked by how different he looked. The broad-shouldered movie star who had filled the screen for decades had become much thinner and noticeably weaker. His strength also faded quickly. Simple activities that once required little effort became difficult. Walking short distances left him exhausted, and he needed increasing amounts of rest throughout the day. As the disease spread, even speaking for long periods became tiring. Those closest to him could see that his body was no longer able to keep up with the determination that had defined so much of his life. As his condition worsened, Wayne became increasingly dependent on medical care. Doctors used feeding tubes when eating normally became difficult. Oxygen helped him breathe more comfortably as his overall health declined. Strong medications were given to control pain and reduce discomfort. Nurses and hospital staff provided constant care, helping with daily tasks that he could no longer manage on his own. For someone who had built his public image around independence and self-reliance, accepting this level of assistance was undoubtedly difficult. Although Wayne rarely spoke publicly about his illness, those around him understood that losing his physical independence was one of the hardest parts of his final months. His illness also placed a heavy emotional burden on his family. Loved ones spent as much time with him as possible, offering support while also preparing themselves for what they knew was coming. Watching someone they cared about become weaker each day was heartbreaking. They tried to create a calm environment around him, limiting unnecessary visitors and protecting his privacy during such a personal time. As death drew closer, conversations naturally turned toward the future and the past. People who were with Wayne during his final weeks later recalled that he spoke about life in a more personal way than he had before. He reportedly reflected on the years he had spent making movies and the enormous career he had built. But alongside those achievements, he also thought about his family and the time he wished he could have shared with them. His approaching death also led him to focus more deeply on his faith. Not long before he passed away, Wayne received the last rites, a sacred Catholic sacrament given to those who are seriously ill or nearing death. For many believers, it is an important part of preparing spiritually for the end of life. Those who were present later said the ceremony was quiet, respectful, and deeply meaningful for both Wayne and his family. Soon, the final chapter of John Wayne's story would unfold, bringing an end to one of Hollywood's most famous lives and finally revealing what happened in his last hours. What really happened on June 11th? By early June 1979, John Wayne's long fight against cancer was coming to an end. After years of battling serious health problems, his body had become too weak to continue fighting the disease. The actor, who had spent decades playing strong and fearless heroes, was now receiving around-the-clock medical care at UCLA Medical Center in Los Angeles, surrounded by doctors, nurses, and the people closest to him. His condition had worsened steadily over the previous weeks. The stomach cancer had spread throughout his body, making treatment far less effective than doctors had hoped. By this stage, the focus was no longer on curing the disease, but on keeping him as comfortable as possible. His medical team worked to manage pain, help him breathe, and provide the support his body needed during its final days. Wayne spent much of his time resting. The illness had taken away much of his strength. He had difficulty eating, relied on medical equipment to help him, and required constant attention from hospital staff. Powerful medications helped ease his pain, but they also left him sleeping for long periods and drifting in and out of full awareness. Despite these challenges, there were still moments when he was able to recognize family members and speak with those around him. These conversations were often brief, because even talking became exhausting. Those close to him tried to make the most of those moments, knowing they were becoming fewer with each passing day. According to people who were present, Wayne's family remained close throughout his final hours. His loved ones stayed by his bedside, offering comfort and support during an incredibly difficult time. They wanted him to know he was not alone. The hospital room was kept as peaceful as possible, allowing family members to spend private moments together without unnecessary attention from the public or the media. Many stories have been told over the years about Wayne's final hours, but not all of them can be confirmed. Some accounts describe emotional conversations and final reflections, while others add dramatic details that cannot be verified through reliable sources. This has led to many myths about what happened during his last day. Separating fact from legend is important because John Wayne's life had been surrounded by larger-than-life stories for decades. The documented medical facts present a much simpler picture. Wayne died after a long struggle with stomach cancer that had spread throughout his body. He was under medical supervision at UCLA Medical Center, receiving palliative care designed to reduce pain and keep him comfortable. His death was not sudden or unexpected. Doctors, family members, and those closest to him understood that the disease had reached its final stage. On June 11, 1979, John Wayne passed away at the age of 72. The official cause of death was stomach cancer. While his earlier battle with lung cancer had received much attention, in later years, it was the advanced stomach cancer that ultimately claimed his life. His previous health problems and years of heavy smoking had weakened his overall condition, but the immediate cause of death was the cancer that had spread beyond effective treatment. News of Wayne's death quickly spread across the United States and around the world. Television networks interrupted regular programming to report the news, while newspapers prepared special editions covering the passing of one of Hollywood's biggest stars. Fans gathered outside his home and at places connected to his long career, mourning the loss of an actor whose films had entertained generations. Public statements from his family thanked fans for their support while asking for privacy during their time of grief. Friends, fellow actors, political leaders, and filmmakers shared tributes, recognizing both his remarkable career and his lasting place in American cinema. Funeral arrangements were handled privately, in keeping with the wishes of his family. Rather than holding a large public ceremony, Wayne was laid to rest in a private service attended by family members and close friends. His burial took place at Pacific View Memorial Park in Newport Beach, California, although the exact location of his grave remained private for several years before becoming publicly known. But even after his passing, one question refused to disappear. What had really caused the illness that ended the life of America's most famous cowboy? The death mystery finally solved. More than 4 decades after John Wayne's death, one question still comes up again and again. What really caused the illness that took his life? Over the years, countless books, documentaries, and newspaper articles have offered different answers. Some blamed smoking. Others pointed almost entirely to radiation exposure during the filming of The Conqueror. As these stories spread, it became difficult to separate proven facts from popular theories. The reason so many conflicting stories exist is simple. John Wayne's medical history was far more complicated than many people realized. His first major health crisis came in 1964 when doctors diagnosed him with lung cancer. After undergoing surgery to remove part of his lung, he recovered well enough to continue acting for many more years. Because his diagnosis was kept largely private at the time, many fans never fully understood what he had already survived. Then, more than a decade later, he developed stomach cancer. Some people mistakenly assumed the stomach cancer was simply the lung cancer returning. In reality, medical records and reports indicate these were separate illnesses. Wayne successfully underwent treatment for lung cancer in the 1960s and lived for many years afterward. His death in 1979 came after developing advanced stomach cancer, which eventually spread and could no longer be controlled. One of the biggest misconceptions is that radiation exposure alone killed him. This belief largely comes from The Conqueror, the 1956 movie filmed near areas affected by radioactive fallout from nuclear weapons testing. Over time, reports revealed that many members of the cast and crew later developed cancer. Because John Wayne was among them, many people concluded that the filming location must have been the direct cause of his death. While the story is certainly concerning, medical experts have been careful not to make that conclusion. Radiation exposure can increase the risk of developing certain cancers. That is well established. However, proving that one specific event caused cancer in one specific person is extremely difficult, especially decades later. There is no medical evidence showing that the filming location alone caused John Wayne's cancers. His smoking history cannot be ignored. Wayne smoked heavily for much of his adult life, often consuming multiple packs of cigarettes each day. Long before modern anti-smoking campaigns became common, cigarettes were part of his everyday routine and even part of his on-screen image. Today, decades of medical research have firmly established that heavy smoking is one of the leading causes of lung cancer and increases the risk of several other serious diseases. His age and overall health also mattered. By the late 1970s, Wayne was in his early 70s. He had already survived one major cancer operation, undergone extensive surgery, and spent years placing significant strain on his body through smoking. Even before stomach cancer developed, his health was no longer what it had been during the peak of his movie career. As more medical information became available after his death, the sequence of events became much clearer. Doctors and later biographical research showed that Wayne first battled lung cancer in 1964. He recovered following surgery and continued working for over a decade. Years later, he developed stomach cancer, which gradually spread despite treatment. It was this second cancer that officially caused his death on June 11, 1979. This clearer timeline helped answer many questions that had confused the public for years. Still, the secrecy surrounding his illnesses had already created fertile ground for speculation. Because his first cancer diagnosis had been hidden from fans and only limited medical information was released while he was alive, rumors naturally filled the gaps. Every new report, interview, or documentary added another version of the story, making the mystery seem even larger than it really was. Today, most medical experts view Wayne's death as the result of multiple risk factors rather than one single cause. His decades of heavy smoking almost certainly played a major role in damaging his health. Any possible radiation exposure during the Conqueror remains a subject of discussion and may have contributed to his overall cancer risk, but it has never been proven as the sole cause. His age, previous illness, and declining physical condition also affected how well his body could fight another aggressive cancer. When all the available evidence is considered together, the mystery becomes much less mysterious. The verified facts show a man who survived one cancer, later developed another, and ultimately died from advanced stomach cancer. The legends, rumors, and unanswered questions may never disappear completely, but the documented medical record paints a far clearer picture than many of the stories that have circulated for decades. Even though the mystery has largely been solved, John Wayne's final chapter continues to remind people that the truth is often more complicated than the legend. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications so you don't miss our next deep dive into the untold stories behind Hollywood's biggest legends.